Okay, so let's start this webinar. So good afternoon or good morning, and welcome to the second Naobios webinar included in this Clean Biologics webinar series. So I am Luis Rayado, and I'm the Business Development Manager for Naobios, and I have the pleasure to co-host this webinar with Eric Leforestier.
Seems that we're having some issues with the sound. Please bear with us.
Okay, sorry, we're having a few issues with the sound, but we'll restart. Okay, so for those of you who didn't hear us the first time, good afternoon or good morning, and welcome to the second Naobios webinar included in the Clean Biologics webinar series. So I'm Luis Rayado, Business Development Manager for Naobios, and I have the pleasure to co-host this webinar with Eric Leforestier.
And hello everyone, so I'm Eric Leforestier and I'm the Managing Director of Naobios.
So currently CDMOs are highly sought out, and we thought of approaching this topic of, are you choosing the right CDMO for your project? Before diving into the webinar, I have a few housekeeping notes. So if you have any questions throughout the presentations, please drop them on the questions chat and right there in the bottom. And we'll do our best to reply at the end of the webinar or offline by email to all unanswered questions during the webinar. So we'll be taking any questions. For those of you who are not aware, Naobios is a CDMO focused based on in the west side of France, in Nantes. And we are focused on process development and manufacturing for viral vectors of any type, either vaccines, gene therapy, or oncolytic viruses. And we've been around since 2005. We are a pharmaceutical establishment. We are GMP certified by the NSM, the French authorities, and we have a staff of little over 40 people working in a multi-purpose facility of about 1,500 square meters. In this multi-purpose facility, we have 5 independent process development labs and 4 independent GMP suites, one of which BSL-3. So one of the objectives of this webinar is really to present the key points and pitfalls of partnering with the CDMO for your project. So we'll be looking at your project from the point of view of your potential CDMO partner as well, and try to create a bit of a dialogue between client and CDMO, and this way try to answer your questions. So if you're looking for a CDMO, this means that you'll be subcontracting. And why are you subcontracting to a CDMO? So mainly you want to benefit from this partner's expertise and technical resources. You want to access the partner's facilities and equipment, and therefore reduce the CapEx investment tied to your project. Also reduce the time to set up manufacturing operations.
And since you will be subcontracting your project, you will probably run into some risks. One of the risks could be loss of control, be it managerial or over your intellectual property. Since you will be dealing with a CDMO that has multiple customers, you may fear also that you do not get the required amount of attention. If it's the first time that you are subcontracting a project, you may not be aware of how costs are calculated, and you may run into hidden costs. And then you may run also into quality issues. So the goal of this presentation is to increase your awareness regarding these risks and to help you manage them.
Okay, so the way we structured this selection process is we divided it in 3 steps. So we will start with the product, then a short list of the CDMOs, and then the 3rd step, which will be the assessment matrix that you will do. So starting with your product, so you want to clearly define your target product profile. You want to compile all knowledge that you have already created during the previous development phases, so during R&D, At this stage, you need to be realistic regarding the maturity of your product and your process. So be aware that biological systems are inherently variable, and you may run into problems with robustness of your process. So be aware and do try to perform a gap assessment between your current process and the process that you would take to your CDMO and see if this process would meet the GMP requirements. You want to talk to CDMOs or CMC consultants and get advice on the GMP requirements. So the second step is to do a short list of CDMOs. So based on your product profile, you will define the required competencies, required facilities and equipment. Here you need to be aware and be clear on the strategy throughout your project and check really the requirements you have throughout this project. So you may be shortlisting CDMOs that will be able to support all stages of your project, but do you need commercial manufacturing capabilities in the initial stages of development? Maybe not. So define the required capacity for the different stages of the project, so that's clear. So the third step will be to perform the assessment matrix. And here you'll be looking at different whats. So what size and type of CDMO are you looking for? What are you looking for in terms of expertise? Is it breadth versus depth? What is the level of integration of your CDMO in terms of partners and company-wise? What is the regulatory authorization the CDMO possesses? What is the quality level? What are the timelines the CDMO can offer, which is related to the risk appetite you have as a client? What is the price of the CDMO? And finally, the intellectual property policy of the CDMO. How do you do that? So you may want to use CMC consultants. Then you'll be eventually either using those CMC consultants or doing a desktop assessment. Here you'll be probably using your typical search engines. Also, you've compiled enough information here to perhaps devise a request for information that you'll be sending out to CFOs, and you want to compile that information. And then based on that information, you want to schedule technical visits and audits.
So now let's go to the other side of the mirror and see what is the point of view of the CDMO. So while you are going through this three-step process, the CDMOs that you have shortlisted are also going to be looking at you and looking at your project. And so they will ask some kind of questions in order to better assess you. So to better know you in terms of type of partner you are. Are you a pure player or are you vertically integrated? What is the profile of your project team? Is that people coming from the company, or are you working also with consultants? What is the process maturity? Are you at an early development stage, or are you ready for a transfer into GMP production? What is also your own self-assessment in terms of process robustness? And this is very important because you need to make sure that you've got the same understanding of where you are in terms of development. This is all about managing expectation and having shared objectives between CDMOs and customer. What is also the possibility for recurring business? Are you presenting to your CDMOs a unique candidate or a whole portfolio of product candidates? What is also the project value? Are you discussing about a single process step to subcontract? Or are you talking about a full development stage, including GMP batches? What are also the risks that would be seen from the CDMO point of view that are associated with a project? For example, will there be a need for additional CapEx? And what about concurrent activities? Because your CDMO will manage multiple projects at the same time. Your CDMO will also want to assess your communication style and cultural fit. This is very important because you are likely going to be for a long time interacting with each other. And so it's important to have good communication. And finally, are you coming with realistic timelines and expectations? Here also, It is important that right from the beginning, your CDMO manage expectations and provide you positive or constructive feedback regarding your expectations.
Okay, so now let's do a bit of a zoom in on the different what's, and first highlighting on the size and type of the CDMO you're looking for. So maybe you're looking for a CDMO with a really big name, who usually is associated with a better track record, and that brand name can eventually convey trust, and you want to have trust that your project will be successful, and also you want to have trust that you'll be able to license out your product.
So please be aware that even if you go with a big name, you may run into some limitation. For example, major CDMO companies have really streamlined their processes and standardized the way they operate. So you may actually have less flexibility that is offered from them, as well as less customization. So if you want a very specific type of development, this might be an issue. Since also these large companies need to manage a big portfolio of different customers, you may also experience a less personalized type of relationship. Depending finally on where you want to subcontract, you may have some limitations. For example, in France, 50% of subcontracted bioproduction is done by sites of less than 50%.
So you'll also be looking at the CDMO's staff number and the number of sites they have, because you want to make sure that your project is going to be run smoothly and doesn't get into delay. So you want to see what your CDMO can offer in terms for backup.
Here also, there are some practical limitations. Even if technically another site can be a backup of the main site, it's not always possible. This could be due to regulatory authorizations, capacity, and in any case, there will be time for transfer between the main site and the backup site. So in any case, do not expect backups to be available immediately.
And you want to question yourself also, is the CDMO working locally or does it have international experience? And speaking of experience, so you'll be looking at the CDMO and you'll be asking yourself, so how many years have they been working for, and how many projects have they completed successfully? What is their prior experience with similar products and clients? So here we recommend that you ask for references. So look into your network and ask if they have experience with this CDMO.
Also, as part of this category, ask also to your CDMO, what is their strategy? Are they going for depth or are they going for breadth? Meaning that, do they have a high level of very specific expertise that you may look for if your process is highly specific? Or do they have the ability to support a wide range of activities, but here you may not receive the same level of expertise? So ask yourself the question, what is the type of service you would need for this very step of your project? Process development, regulatory support, analytical development, stability study, or storage, for example. The next question is about the level of integration of your CDMO. Obviously, it's not always possible for a CDMO to cover 100% of the activities that exist as part of pharmaceutical development. So you may have the opportunity to work with a fully integrated CDMO or a CDMO working with a network of partners. If your CDMO is looking with a network of partners, look at the partnerships that have been established. You may look into the geographical proximity, which is always easier compared to interacting with partners located at the other side of the world. Also in terms of duration, have they been working together for a long time? And what is also the individual reputation of each one of the partners? Please be aware that this will have also consequences on the communication and on the management of responsibilities. So do ask who is going to coordinate the activities and who will be responsible for what. Is that going to be your CDMO or is that going to be yourself arranging for coordination? Even if it's a fully integrated CDMO, ask about the internal organization to better understand how tech transfer are going to be done for each step of your project.
So you may have seen that we highlight the ask. So communication is key. Communicate with your CDMO. And so you're looking for CDMOs, and you'll be working within a regulated setting. So CDMOs will have to comply with certain regulations. So you'll be covering several. You see here in this slide, you have the several steps of your process. You have from R&D, drug discovery, which is usually not regulated. You have the preclinical development, which is governed by good laboratory practices, the clinical development, where you need to comply with good clinical practices, and your CDMO will be doing the manufacturing for all these phases, where they need to comply with good manufacturing practices. But be aware that not regulated does not mean that everything is possible. So if you're on R&D level, you still need to look at your process and ask if your process is scalable, if it's robust and compatible with GMP.
So again, if we go to the other side of the mirror, if you are from a pure R&D background, you may not be aware of all the regulations and constraints that your CDMO will need to manage. So here I will not go through the full list of regulations here. Obviously, CGMPs is the main one. So here I put some of the chapters from the European GMP, the Usual-X. Depending on where your product is going to be used, there will be different pharmacopoeias that will be used as a reference. And then we've got different type of regulation. For example, if your microorganism is considered as highly pathogenic, then it will fall in France under the MOT regulation, which is against bioterrorism. Depending also on the cell line you are going to use, if they are coming from endangered species, there will be also some extra authorization that will be needed from an environmental protection point of view. And similarly, if your virus or cell is a GMO, there will be extra authorization. So please be aware that specific authorizations take time, and you need to include that in your overall project timeline.
So other regulatory aspects that you'll be looking into is for which markets is your CDMO, will your CDMO be able to work for? Will it be able to work for the French market, which is covered by the ANSM, the US market, FDA or Anvisa in Brazil, for instance? For which activities can your CDMO work? Can it do drug substance, drug product? Is your product an ATMP? Can they work for this type of product? So these are all things that you need to consider. And when you look at the CDMO, you need to check their inspection history. What is their inspection history by those regulatory agencies? You need to be aware that findings are to be expected on every CDMO, but do not worry so much about the quantity of the findings. Look more into what those findings were, what the finding types, and also look at the trends over multiple inspections and see how your CDMO is evolving throughout those inspections. So are the inspections, the regulatory agencies finding different findings, which means that your CDMO is evolving in a positive way. So be aware of that.
Beyond the pure regulatory authorization that are obviously necessary for a CDMO, you will need also to assess the overall maturity level of your CDMO's quality system. So we talked about inspection reports. You may ask for extracts of inspection reports directly to your CDMO. In some countries, such as the US, they can be also available through the Freedom of Information Act. Since it's a very small world, you may also ask to your CMC expert what is the reputation of each CDMO. Definitely, you will need to evaluate this basic information against the needs required for your project. And so you will be doing that during technical visit and quality audits. So technical visit usually opens first. They are less formal. But make sure that you already include key people that will be able to assess not only the technical feasibility, but also the quality level at each CDMO. Certainly the quality audits that will happen second will be much more formal. And here definitely you will need to bring in a multidisciplinary team, including CMC expert, QC expert, and quality assurance expert. So definitely book some time and spend some time with the CDMOs you have shortlisted. And in our case, come to Nantes to visit us.
So now we move on to a very important aspect, which is the timelines. So you're asking your CDMO for timelines. And yes, so timelines are not so straightforward. They will really depend on many aspects, one of which will be the risk appetite you have as a client. So timelines can be set up in appropriately aggressive ways. And this means that you can optimize your development plan, you can do activities in parallel, stagger them, but they all come with a certain level of risk, and you need to consider, are you willing to take that risk? So another point to consider is the think and challenge the number and size of pilot lots, and also the analytical requirements on each step. So the longer you take in manufacturing pilot lots, the bigger the analytical requirements on each step, the longer you'll take to the clinics.
Another critical aspect, obviously, is price. This one could be a bit tricky because it may not be always easy to compare the different quotations that are going to be sent by the CDMOs you have shortlisted. So do make sure that you check what is included and not included. In some cases, raw materials will not be included. Some CDMOs may also offer a different level of qualities, so inquire also about that. And by comparing the different offers and asking for more detail, you may actually uncover potential hidden costs. Please be also aware that even if you have very detailed quotations, and most likely they will come in terms of work packages, each work package may not be directly comparable in terms of cost from one CDMO to the other. And this is very simply due to the internal cost structure of the CDMO, therefore impacting the price that you will get. Beyond the pure price tag, look also at the condition, the payment terms that are offered by the CDMO. And here you will need to involve your own CFO. For example, look at invoicing plan and booking fees, because they will definitely impact your cash flow. And here there is some opportunity for negotiation.
Cool. Lastly, in the list of what's, you want to check what is the intellectual property policy of your CDMO. Is it agnostic, or is it a platform-based company who will have more standardized methods, but also be less flexible as they have their own systems in place, their own cell lines? So if you are working with this particular cell line, you want to look at the CDMO's prior experience, their preference. If the CDMO is owned by someone, you want to contact the owner and ask if the CDMO has worked with that cell line, that particular cell line. Usually, the product IP remains the partner's company, but technological IP remains the CDMO's company property. Sorry.
So in conclusion, we've seen that there are many criteria to be assessed as part of this exercise. And it will be difficult for any given CDMO to check all the boxes and meet all your expectations. So you need to be very clear about what are the key elements that you are looking for at a very specific step of your project. Again, you need to break down your project phase by phase and ask yourself the question, what is the most important for this phase of the project and then for the next phase of the project? So it will be a balancing act.
Here you can see how we position ourselves in this assessment matrix and what we consider to be our value proposition. So Naobios is an international, small-sized boutique company. We have a breadth of expertise, but we do have a depth of services. We do have a strong network, so we have partners working with us and even some part of a group. So we are part of the Clean Biologics group. We are GMP certified by the French authorities, but we've worked with markets such as the Indian market, Japanese market, US market. We have a long-standing mature quality assurance system and team. We can be flexible, and here I'm talking about the timelines, but not to the breaking point. As I mentioned, there are risks, and we try to manage these risks together with our clients the best we can. In terms of price, I will recommend you to inquire and make your own assessment. And our intellectual property policy is bring your own cell line and viruses. And we'll be taking all questions now. We'll be answering all questions. So give us 1 or 2 minutes just to browse through, and we'll be starting to answer them.
So we're now back to answer your questions. So first question, is it possible to have a fast track project at Naobios?
Well, to answer your question, Eric, it's not your question, but the audience question. Well, it is possible to fast track projects, and but it will really depend on the project. Currently, there are a lot of limitations in terms of raw material supplies, so this is really something that we need to consider seriously when designing timelines and looking at project timelines. So please consult with us, and we'll see if it's possible or not to fast track the project.
Yes, it's currently your biggest limitation. Okay, another question is, when do you have available slots for a project?
Okay, so again, this is something that we recommend that you discuss with us, because this will depend on the size of the project and the type of the project. We may be able to put a project in the next 3 months if it's a small project, and also depending again on the raw material requirements. But usually it will take 6 months until a project can be brought in and started. I hope this answers your questions.
Okay, so next question is, can you work with a company based in the US?
Well, I think we answered that question during the presentation. So yes, we can work with customers based in the US, and we are currently working with customers based in the US.
Okay, and we have also another question. What is your current maximum manufacturing scale and technology available?
So our maximum manufacturing scale is 200 liters. So we are using the Sartorius bioreactors for large-scale manufacturing. These are single-use bioreactors for typical mammalian cell culture. And we can do manufacturing in smaller scales also. We can do 50-liter scales. We can also work in fixed bed bioreactors. We can work up to a maximum of a 200 square meter surface area in the iCELLis system, for instance. And yeah, for more details, please do talk to us.
Okay, one additional question. Are you related to one specific bioreactor supplier or accept any type of supplier?
Yes, so we're not tied to any particular bioreactor supplier. We can work with any supplier out there. We are agnostic in technology, but we do prefer the ones that we currently have installed. So if you're coming with a 200-liter bioreactor, we would, of course, implement that project in our 200-liter bioreactor and not purchase a new one. So, but still, we are not bound to any supplier or any particular bioreactor technology.
Okay, I believe that's it in terms of question. So for any additional question you may have, you can send them by email or contact us, and we'll be very happy to reply.
We'll be sharing this presentation with all participants, so expect them by email. And thank you for your attention. Do contact us either at contact@Naobios or directly to me at luis.rayado@naobios.com.
And after the end of this presentation, we'll be posting the recording also, so it will be available offline. So thank you very much for your attention. Have a great day, and feel free to contact us. We'll be very happy to discuss with you about your next project.
Yeah, thank you so much, and hope to see you soon.
Bye-bye.